Hi everyone, welcome back to Pockets, the series where we do written journaling and then make ephemera to go along with our introspective answers to fill our pocket journal filled with personal ephemera. And it has been a minute. I took a little break while I was doing the artist's way. It felt important to give myself some space. Our previous prompt had to do with choosing our values and picking what was aligned. I told you guys to try to pick 5. Sorry for that noise. Just know that I did have to use a list off the internet, so if you did, there's no shame in that, but I really had a hard time thinking about what it was that was exactly important as far as core values. And this is what I came up with, and you just saw me journaling about them. I have curiosity, which is my word for 2026. If you listen to my podcast, Living Practice, you would know that curiosity is a big thing that I want to try to step into and approach my emotions and my daily life with more curiosity and a little bit more silliness and just taking things a little less seriously. There is creativity. This is something I already inhabit pretty heavily every day. Compassion. I try to remember where I came from, and the fact that when I was in really dire situations and pretty much rock bottom, what I thought was rock bottom, compassion would have actually made a huge difference for me. And so I kind of take it upon myself to extend that to other people because it is not my place to judge. Forgiveness is another one that feels important. I don't think that we have to be best friends with the people that we choose to forgive. But when we don't forgive people, it is not their burden that they carry, it is the burden that we carry. Forgiveness releases us from the burden of holding on to negative emotions and memories that we just don't need to be ruminating on. And finally, I had kindness written, but that felt kind of not mushy, that's not the right word, but it felt kind of like it wasn't specific enough. And so I changed it out for patience. This is another one that I think I could embody more of. I know I've told you guys before, I know I speak slow. I actually move pretty slowly throughout my day-to-day life. I often feel rushed trying to keep up with other people. And I just think learning more patience with myself, learning more patience with those around me, learning more patience when trying to learn new things or understand other people's perspectives is an important way that we can move out of this mindset of binary living that I know a lot of us have been stuck in. Binary thinking is probably the number one culprit in my mind as to why the world is in the situation that it's in, because everything doesn't exist good, bad, evil, not evil. It's not just a world of opposites. Everything exists on an ever expanding spectrum, and there is nuance to every situation. So learning patience so that we can take a step back and look at the full scope of a picture would make a huge difference in how not only how we live our lives, but also how we interact with others, how we embody our own body, and how we talk to ourselves. Because I bet there's a lot of times that you have felt like you needed to get more accomplished or needed to be more in a hurry, when actually you probably needed to slow down, perhaps even stop, maybe not do anything for the day. I'm not passing judgment because this is something I do myself. So I hope that you decide to join me for this new section. So these are my values that I've outlined. There's only 5. I do have more. I'm sure I have more. These are the ones I chose to journal on. And the Emperor is our tarot card. The deck is Tarot for All Ages that we've been using for this entire journal class. You don't have to include tarot as part of the practice for this, but it feels important. So when we think of the Emperor, a lot of people want to, again, go to that binary thinking of the Empress versus the Emperor, feminine, masculine. But I encourage you to step back from binary thinking and beyond gendered thinking and actually approach it from how we all inhabit the emperor energy, because we have the emperor, we all have the emperor and empress within us. And so the emperor is very, a lot more aligned with rules, and I don't want to say regulations, but rules and structure and how society is set up, and overseeing connections and making sure that things are fair and just. And, it seems pretty cut and dry with the rules. You're either breaking a rule or you're not. It seems pretty interesting, but so this, in contrast with the values that I picked, is actually very interesting, because I think that I can decide to live by my own rules and or values, um, but I can not hold other people to them. I can explain my point of view. I can introduce them to why I think that they're important, but I cannot make other people find them as important as I do. So I think that, holding myself to the standards that I would want other people to hold me to, but understanding that not everyone is going to see things from my point of view, and I have to meet people where they're at and be open for conversation and debate, is probably, that's the meaning I'm taking from it. As always, we are going to consult our handy dandy guide, the Emperor: strategy, stability, wisdom, protection. The Emperor reflects the masculine qualities in each of us. When he has a clear goal in mind, nothing can stand in the way. His crown is decorated with an ankh, the Egyptian symbol for life, and a set of horns referring to the energetic qualities of the Greek warrior god Ares. The problem-solving skills of the Emperor bring a sense of calm, organization to any situation, no matter how complicated. Divide the larger issue into smaller parts and create a plan to address each element. Draw up your inner motivation and see it all the way through. The numeral 4 refers to creation, stability, and decisions. So, thinking of stability, the word scaffolding has showed up in some classes that I've taken and in some of my writing, because it has been coming up. And I guess I see the values as kind of like the pillars, the foundation, the scaffolding that hold up the rest of our lives. And so the Emperor is a great energy to embody for this, because of the fact that we know that this represents stability. We are protected and we are stable when we know and can stand firm in what it is that we believe. I am a recovering people pleaser, and when you are a people pleaser, it's easy to mold your values, ideals, and actions to what it is you think other people want from you, which is disingenuous to other people, manipulative, and also disingenuous to yourself. You're not doing them or yourself any favors by doing this. And so when we build our firm foundation and stand firm in our emperor energy, it allows us to um, not feel weakened or as though we need to back down in other areas of our life. For patience, the ephemera that I wanted to include is this little stitching swatch that I got from Julia at theflyingcat.net. I don't currently have a stitching swatch that I can include, but it's a hobby that both of us have been kind of diving into. They're like way more advanced in it than me, because I haven't had the time or patience to sit with it. I've been working on other things. I also have this Irish Blessing cross stitch that I found at a thrift shop. I'm not going to put this in the actual journal just because, like I said, I actually want to hang it up somewhere in my house, probably over my altar, but I did practice my lettering, which is one of my favorite activities, by copying it onto this postcard with one of my favorite pens, which is the Tombow Fujinosuke pen. And then for curiosity and creativity, compassion, forgiveness, patience, I really thought the best way to exemplify that would be to make a collage. I have this watercolor piece that I did just as like a meditation. But I thought like a flower collage would be really appropriate because flowers are one thing that I actually grew this year, which is a bit different. It's outside of what we normally do. Normally, we focus primarily on growing food, but I wanted to focus on something different. Flowers are something I've always wanted to grow, and as I've dove further into my journey with the Virgin Mary and just really stepping into my comfortability of being outside and exploring nature, even though it's not something I'm super familiar with, flowers have become pretty important for me. I like trying to identify the flowers that we find out in nature. I don't remember exactly what it is that the app that we use, I think it's called Seek. It helps my kids learn. You guys are probably like cringing because I'm tearing up some books, but this is how we do it at my house. But my kids are able to learn about nature that's around them by finding something that looks interesting and asking, hey, mom, can you tell me what this is? And then we look it up. We use the app because that feels important. Just because I want to get it correct and I want to have a record of what we find because we can always go back and look up more information about it later. So I'm kind of these are all books I've gotten like at thrift shops or they were like laying around, not really getting used for anything. So I am going to use them in this. Oh, I really like that like barn picture. I don't think I can use that in this collage, but I'm going to save it for my stash for collages later. I do think I can use like this little birdhouse type situation, or even on the backside, we have this. I apologize if I sniffle a little bit. We had a snowstorm in the Midwest, and so my allergies are going bananas. I've had a sinus headache for, I don't know, 3 days now. Anyways, so flowers to me, like being curious and trying to figure out what flowers are what, learning more about them, learning what makes them different than the other flowers, also staying open just to, learning more about nature and taking care of the environment that's around us has been important. My kids always, my kids are, it's wonderful. They, our schools teach that they need to take care of the earth around them. I don't think that this is going to glue very well. I used natural pigment watercolors for that painting meditation, and I don't think so. I want to see if this larger card is going to fit in my pocket, and it is. This is a 4x6 card. When I first started, let me zoom out a little bit. When I first started art journaling, I ordered like a whole stack of cards. But I did not think, am I in chat? Okay. I did not think that this is watercolor paper with natural pigments and it's like kind of gritty. I'm going to end up covering up the painting anyways because I ended up with so many great flower pictures. So I did not think that that was the great background that I needed it to be. Anyways, so creativity, flowers. I use flowers obviously in my collage all the time, but I also have dried flowers hanging up, and I've drawn a lot of flowers. And whenever I feel as though I go through this like period where I feel like I'm never going to draw again, or I feel like I'm never going to collage again, and more often than not, something in nature is what brings me back. In my Substack, write about my daily walks quite a bit, and nature is always the thing, especially like with my writing practice and poetry practice. Like I wrote a whole chapbook just about what I was seeing on my walks and what I was noticing. And I know I've talked about it before, but I live in a tiny town and I'm walking the same route every day. It's just a track at this little park down the street and it just goes in a circle. And I wrote a whole chapbook just by paying attention and getting curious and creative with what's around me. Compassion. I think this is important, especially considering the era that we live in. My kids are still pretty young, so they don't understand the full scope of climate change in the world that they're going to be inheriting. And I'm certainly not perfect by any means. I don't think any of us are. But I do think that being compassionate and understanding that we are not the only living beings that inhabit this planet is like a good first step in starting to understand why it's important that we treat the earth with respect other than our own other than the human race surviving. Like, if you can step outside of your own world for a second, your own little universe of a life, and understand that like all living beings deserve dignity and respect, it becomes easy to understand that, mankind doesn't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily be the ones to dictate the rules, if you want to put it that way. Anyways, I've been talking to my kids about this a lot lately. During the snowstorm, or not during the snowstorm, but after the snowstorm, one of the country roads that we have to take to their school, there were flocks of birds that were having difficulty lifting off in the with the winds, and cars were just smashing into these birds. And I did hit 3 birds because, like, at a certain point, we had to. That was Mellow barking, by the way. At a certain point, like, you have to assess the risk. Like, am I going to get in a car accident and hurt another person because I slam on the brakes for these birds? I also kind of thought, like, birds usually get out of the way, especially on those country roads. Like, they call it close sometimes, but they always get out of the way. And I'm sharing this because I actually had to pull one that had passed out of the grill of my car. And I apologized to it, and I was very sad, and it was really hard. And so my kids were asking me, I did this while my kids were at school. My kids were asking me about it, about why there were so many dead birds on the road on our way back home from school pickup. And I had to explain to them that, a lot of people were in a rush and maybe didn't have the chance. I am going to take over with the voiceover function now, because after I got done recording and I put this video together, I actually realized that the microphone I was using died. So now we were talking about my kids asking about the dead birds on the road, and I explained to them that sometimes people don't realize that they're not going to get out of the way, and sometimes it's not safe for people to pause or stop or slow down on one of those country roads where you have like semis going really fast and other cars going fast, and there are farm equipment vehicles that you have to look out for, and people trying to pass the farm equipment vehicles. Even after a snowstorm, people don't really slow down. And so it was a really unfortunate thing to witness, but I appreciated the way that my kids attentively asked the questions, and like me, they were sad, and I was able to drive rather slow on the way home, and I don't believe that we hit one while they were in the car with me, which thank goodness, because it was awful. But I am glad that they asked the questions and that we were able to talk about it, through curiosity and compassion and patience. We were able to have a conversation that I hope led to a not necessarily a good place because it's hard for kids to learn about something like that or to see something like that, but it was a learning experience for both them and for me, and it's something that nature, since we moved out to the country, nature and flowers and just being around this environment more has taught me so much. Like, I can't even express how much it has taught me. It has become such an important aspect of my practice, from the chapbook of poetry that I wrote, just walking every day, to the fact that, most of my ideas come during these walks. All of my mail club idea, my activities that I plan for this class, all of these things have come from my walks out in nature, even though I go the same route every single day. And so I really think that even though when we first moved to this town, I was a bit resentful of it, I think, because it is almost exactly like the town I grew up in. From the gas station that we have in town to the fact that there's only like 600 people. The town I grew up in had 1,100, so it was actually a bit bigger. Actually, just a side note, I'm looking out my window right now and watching a blue jay clean its plumage in the maple tree outside the window, and there is another one. So we're constantly provided with gifts from the planet that we live on. Technology didn't work out for me today the way that I wanted it to. The voice aspect from my microphone, all of the story that I told you guys, I don't remember what I said because I usually just ramble, but everything that I said is completely lost from this last part of the video. But I would not have paused and looked up to see the blue jays here. So that is something that is another thing that has been a gift from nature, is just this active participation and noticing of beauty, of, even mundane things around me. It's really reignited my imagination. And when it comes to values, I think that, I didn't write this on my list, but living my values in a way that translates to a good life for my children, and my children seeing how one can make a small, cozy life for themselves and find contentment, that feels important as well. That feels like one of the most important things. So this is my flower collage. I'm pretty happy with how it is turning out. I really like the little bird box there. Most of my interactions with nature, I do a lot of bird watching. We get a lot of hawks and falcons and blue jays and cardinals, and there's a yellow bird. I can't remember what the name of it is, but we get a lot of birds here. So like the bird box feels appropriate. The flowers feel appropriate. It all feels like a good representation of my home and what feels representative of that foundation of my life that I was talking about when we talk about values. Another part of this project was including collage cards with it. So I'm going to pull a collage card. If you've not been around for a while or you weren't aware, I did start a art mail club. It's called Care Mail Art Club. Every month you will get a new zine, a new sticker, an original artwork, and usually some other extra bits for your journal. I usually include a collage card just like this. That's why this is looking kind of thin. I need to make some more. It's $11 a month, and it's helping me actualize my dreams of self-publishing. So the card that I pulled is ruminate. I think this is important because while we want to live aligned with our values and show up in a way that we are proud of, we also don't want to focus so much on it that we get caught up in how we are perceived. That moves us away from authenticity. It moves us away from honesty. What we want to do is just show up and do our best. I've been looking into moral scrupulosity a little bit and also catastrophizing. These are two things I've done since I was a little kid. So don't get caught up on like technicalities and just do your best. And I think our values are something that we can revisit when it feels like we've gone through a major shift. So in this pocket, we have this little thing here. It's from the Irish Blessing cross stitch that I had. It reads, "May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sunshine warm upon your face. May God fill your heart with gladness and hold you in the palm of his hand." We also have the stitch sample from theflyingcat.net. We have our collage card with the word ruminate, and we have our honoring nature collage that we did together as I shared about all of the lessons I've learned since moving to the country. I think that I'm really happy with the ephemera I've put together for this pocket so far, and I'm glad that this is what we are putting in here. Now, because I had a hard time thinking of prompts the last couple times, I actually wrote one down. It says, write a description of who you think of as your inner child. What age are you? What do you look like? What are you asking about? What are you concerned about? Those types of things. We are going to actually be making a paper doll together and making any other paper doll accessories to go with it, and then be doing some journaling exercises and making other ephemera for our other pockets to go along with it. So I want you to really dig into this and think about what age comes to mind when you think of your inner child. I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of the week. I hope that the world is kind to you. I hope that you say hi to your neighbors. And most importantly, I hope that you go and make something today. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you remember to, hit the bell if you want to know when I'm posting, and share with a friend. Bye.